Right. Good evening, everyone, and thanks a lot, Craig, for the kind introduction. So I'd like to talk tonight. By the way, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me at the back?
Okay.
Yeah. So if you can't, then please remind me to speak up. So I'd like to talk tonight about Agile product roadmaps. And there's some people who say you shouldn't use roadmaps at all. Some people I've heard say you can't use roadmaps in an Agile context. Personally, I find roadmaps a valuable tool, but I think it's important to use them in the right way to apply them effectively, and that's what I'd like to discuss with you tonight. I thought I'd say a couple of words about myself. I'll keep this as short and sweet as I can, and don't want to bore you with many details. So there are two things in a way that I do that are part of my job. The first one is I consult and I teach product owners and product managers, and I help companies build effective product management groups. So I'm a product management consultant and trainer, and I'm specialized in Lean and Agile practices. The second part that I'd like to point out is that I also run a small business, but based just outside London in Buckinghamshire, and as such I manage the majority of the products that we have. They're very small, we don't have that many products, but still our website, the tools that I've created, the books that I've written, the majority of the services that we provide. So I need to look after those products, and I try and walk my own talk and apply the techniques and concepts and at least some of the tools that I'll talk about tonight in my own work. Good. Yes, to get started, I thought it might be a good idea to just take a few minutes and reflect on what are roadmaps and why should we bother with them anyway. Does that make sense? Good. So, product roadmaps. I find it helpful when we talk about road mapping and product planning in general to distinguish three different planning layers or levels, if you want so. The first one really is the vision, the overarching goal that we're trying to achieve, the reason why we're building a new product, why we're doing something. So, that's in a way the highest, grandest planning level. The next one is the product strategy. At least I find it helpful to distinguish the product strategy and call it out. And interesting enough, I find that particularly in the Agile literature and Agile communities, strategy often isn't really talked about that much. So there's some emphasis on vision and visioning, and then often I find people tend to jump to the details, to the more operational level, to the specifics, to the user stories, user journeys, scenarios, the visual design artifacts, all the good things that you have to create, all the good things that you have to do in order to build a great product. So lots of attention to the details, quite a bit of attention to the vision, but sometimes there's sort of a gap in the middle, and this is where at least to a certain extent the product roadmap comes in. One of the benefits of the roadmap is that it provides a link between the vision and the more operational level, the user stories that you then find typically in your product backlog. So for me, a product roadmap is a strategic planning tool. It's a high-level plan that provides a longer-term outlook on how the product is likely to grow and looks beyond the next release. So it allows you to connect the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 upcoming releases, depending on how far you can look ahead, and depending on how long it takes you to release software. Another benefit is that by having this high-level plan, by connecting individual releases, there's a sense of continuity of purpose. Right? So we're not just looking at an individual project with an individual delivery, we're now looking at this project and the delivery in a wider context. And this helps, that's at least what I find, to acquire a budget and make transparent why an investment in the product is required. And what's going to happen with all the money that the organization spends on new releases and new features. It also helps to align stakeholders, set the expectations, and create awareness around what gets done, and equally what doesn't get done. So making prioritization decisions and deciding which features get implemented and how soon they get implemented. And a final benefit, final reason why I like to work with product roadmaps is that they help with portfolio management. So they help me to coordinate the development and launch of different products. So I find a number of good reasons why it makes sense to consider applying working with product roadmaps. Again, the trick is really to do it in such a way that it's meaningful in an Agile and Lean setting where we expect that things are likely to change, where there's often a fair amount of uncertainty and risk. Now, I realize so far it's been fairly high level, and I thought in order to continue the discussion, it'd be kind of nice to work with an example. And I thought, I'm not sure if this is going to resonate with you, but I thought maybe we'll sort of take something that's slightly fun, like a game. Has anybody come across this? Has anybody checked that out? Has anybody played with it? No? So you can go to giphy.com. It's the GIF dance party. I think it's hilarious. It's very enjoyable. That's it. I find it really good. Allows you to select different characters. So you see a wizard here, and a girl, a bloke, a cat, and a teddy bear. They dance around. You can resize them. You can move them around on the dance floor. You can change the dance floor. And you can change the music. Now, if we wanted to build something similar, but maybe more polished, and maybe as an iPad application targeted at kids, then we could come up with the following product roadmap. That would be a traditional approach to creating a product roadmap, a simple structure, a simple table, where we determine the delivery dates or the delivery time frame at the top. So you can see I've chosen quarters, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter. And then the name of the major releases that we're planning to release within those time frames, which is very exciting in this example, version 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can see lots of features. Right? So a list of features that I believe are required at this point in time to deliver the various versions. So here the roadmap talks about choosing and customizing characters and dance floors, being able to play with up to 2 friends, post snapshots on Facebook. Version 2 then talks about the ability to make in-app purchases, such as ballet and modern dance moves. It's the ability to create new dances by combining moves. Version 3 then says, well, we need new characters, and it's fairly specific about which characters are required, such as an alien or Hello Kitty, cool 3D effects, and finally, we'll change the game and take it forward, introduce some street dance moves and a dance competition. Now, there's nothing wrong with this product roadmap per se, but I feel that particularly in an Agile or Lean setting, it does carry a few problems. And the first issue that I have working with a traditional feature-centric, feature-heavy and delivery date-driven roadmap is that, well, it is dominated by features. Right? So there are lots of features on there, often too many features, and often those features I find are too detailed. Now, that makes it difficult really to see a coherent story and see how the product is likely to grow and evolve, and it in a way turns a strategic product planning tool into something more tactical. And there's an overlap then potentially at least with the product backlog or your product candidate, with the user stories and epics in your backlog. The second issue I have with a traditional product roadmap is that it doesn't really explain why all those features are required. Why money and time and energy should be spent to provide, for instance, 3D effects or a Hello Kitty character. Well, what's the reason behind it? So again, that doesn't really help to communicate a convincing story. And finally, I don't know if you've experienced that, but I've seen senior managers and salespeople look at traditional product roadmaps, look at the feature lists, and essentially take them as given, as granted, as sort of commitments. And that then creates a conflict with the Agile teams, who usually make the commitment only for the next few days or few weeks. So, those are the reasons that I feel uncomfortable working with a traditional roadmap in an Agile setting. but rather than saying, well, let's forget about roadmaps and figure out some other ways to then fill that gap in terms of capturing our ideas around the product strategy, I would suggest that you consider applying an Agile product roadmap. And an Agile product roadmap, in my mind, is a goal-oriented roadmap. So moving away from features to goals, and as it happens, I've created a specific template which I'd like to briefly share with you. This specific roadmap is called the Go Product Roadmap, as it is, focused on goals. So, here we go. The structure of this goal-oriented roadmap consists of essentially 5 lines. And it comes with icons, so it clearly must be better than a traditional roadmap. It's got more lines and it's got icons. I also said attempt, so making a joke. So anyway, the first line, that will be my suggestion, contains the date, the launch date or time frame of your product. That's not really anything particularly exciting. The next line talks about the name. Again, that's pretty much what we've already seen, what we just saw with the traditional roadmap. But the third line, hopefully, is a little bit more interesting. The third line contains the goal of each release that is captured on your roadmap. And so the goal should really explain why it's worthwhile creating the release. What are the desired benefits? What is the reason for carrying out the release? So something like, for instance, user acquisition or activation or retention, or a release goal could be to reduce technical debt, or a release goal could be to enhance the user experience, again maybe related to user retention. So why should the release be developed? Why is it worthwhile spending time and money? And then based on the goal, we can identify the key features that we believe are necessary in order to meet the goal. What is required, what do we need to do? But I'd like to point out the big difference between a traditional roadmap is that the features are really they serve the goal, they're there to meet the goal, and they should be derived from the goal. So whenever you have a road mapping discussion or session, I would suggest that you first and foremost focus on the goals, and once you've agreed on the goals, and once you've established shared goals, and the goals are coherent, they make sense, so that each release in a way is connected to the previous and the subsequent releases. Then think about the features. And the other suggestion I'd like to make is limit the number of features to 2 to 3 per release here in your roadmap, and keep them really at a core strength level. And the details should be then in your product backlog or product canvas. So the details that you need in order to actually build the product. So keep this at a fairly high level, so it serves as a strategic planning tool, and don't mix the tactical, operational, and the strategic level. And finally, I would encourage you to think about how you can determine success, how you can tell if the goal's been met or not, and add some metrics or KPIs, key performance indicators. And that avoids using fussy goals. Having fussy goals is great. When we talk about something like a vision statement, visionary goals are brilliant, but when it comes to the product roadmap, I think your goals should be a little bit more specific. So they should be measurable. Hence, think about how you determine if the goal's been met or not, what the metrics are that you want to use. So that would be my suggestion for a format for an Agile product roadmap. I'd like to now take the next step and explore with you how we could apply this roadmap. Again, maybe in the context of our little game application. So again, it's a little bit boring in the sense that it's yet another table, I'm afraid. You can see the difference now compared to a traditional roadmap is that we not only contain information around delivery time frame and what the version is called, but now we have a goal. And the goal of the first release is to acquire users, build a user community, and the 3 key features that I've put down provide a basic game functionality, multiplayer functionality, and Facebook integration. And I've purposefully tried to keep it at a fairly high level and not in a way to anticipate too much what basic functionality will be provided or how the Facebook integration is done. It may be a snapshot, it may be something else. Similarly, I didn't really put any restrictions around how many players should be able to play together in the stance game. And as the metrics, I've decided to go for the number of downloads and the goal of having the game in the top 10 of the appropriate group within the Apple App Store. And the next columns are similarly, sort of in a similar fashion. For version 2, which is planned for the second quarter, the goal now shifts to activation. So generating revenue by encouraging people to make in-app purchases. With version 3, the focus shifts to retention. New characters and enhanced visual design are here some of the key things that I believe need to be done. And finally, with the fourth version, there's a shift back to acquisition. The idea is to provide a new segment and provide new functionality in order to be able to address that segment and then make it attractive for those users to come and play the game. That's my version of an Agile product roadmap. Again, it is based around goals. And again, I'd like to encourage you to first and foremost think about goals before you think about features. So first ask yourself, why should we really create a release? What are the desired benefits? Why we're doing it? And then figure out what are the features. And I would also like to encourage you again to think about KPIs and metrics so that you can measure if you've achieved your goal or if you haven't. So far so good. I think there are a couple of questions now. I'm not sure who was first, so I'll ask you to ask your question first, please.
Because it's basic, you mentioned goal a couple of times, where does actually the customer come into the picture? Because I often find that it's like, this is what we want to do.
Yes. Yes. And
just like an organization short leaves out the customer, I feel the examples you've given here is again based on what we want to do.
Yes. Yeah. Very good question. Did everybody hear that question? Yeah, so where's the customer? Where are the users? Very good question. If it's okay, I'd like to answer it on the next slide. Yeah.
Yes, please. Roman, 2 questions in one, if that's all right. So, first question is, how do you, or if you at all, link it to the overarching business objectives, because the goals that you hear are quite specific. And the second one is, especially when you talk about the why, if there's already particular assumptions that you put in your roadmap that you want to test or validate as part of the process.
Yes, very good questions. Again, hopefully they'll be addressed by the next few slides. So if it's again okay with you, I'd like to basically use the next slide to answer your question.
Let's say you want to accomplish certain feature set that's in your product backlog, that's driven by the purchase dance moves and the create new dances, and you don't manage to complete all of those, and they typically tend to bleed into the third quarter, into the next product roadmap. But if it does, then it will impact what needs to be accomplished in the third quarter. So would you recommend that we drop it from the second quarter if some of the features are not accomplished?
So again, in a way, I'd like to talk about the relationship between the product roadmap and the product backlog in one of the next slides. I would suggest that you don't look at the product roadmap in an Agile setting as a fixed plan that is now executed. That in a way is, in my mind, more a traditional approach or mindset. I think in an Agile context, it is a high-level plan that's likely to change. I think whenever we do something new, whenever we build new products, new features, plans change. They don't, in a way, survive the contact with reality. Things are just often too certain. Things are often just too dynamic to be able to, stick to a fixed, fairly rigid plan. Unless your product's fairly mature in the market, then your service is fairly mature. So your roadmap needs to change. I've got a slide that talks about, in a way, unplanned, bigger changes, and hopefully also allows us to follow up on your question and discuss other changes a little bit more. Is that okay?
Yes.
So I'm saying to everyone, oh, yeah, great questions, but I'm not going to answer them right.
Just a comment, I think a large problem with agile teams is that we're dealing with management who's used to looking at roadmaps and immediately thinking committed delivery.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. So, the danger with using a roadmap is that management looks at them and thinks it's a fixed plan, it's sign off, so, go and do it. And that's absolutely true, but I think that's also true for many other aspects, of Agile and Lean practices that in a way requires a new mindset and letting go of old habits and, acquiring new practices. And I think that's a challenge for managers as much as it is in some cases for the developers and the product owners and product managers.
One of the problems with a roadmap, there are multiple uses for a roadmap. Most of what we've talked about here is probably a vision or visibility of how the product is going to get there, and who's going to use this roadmap. Right? Is it for internal management? Is it for developers? And generally for the software development team.
Yes.
But there are other people who are interested in this. Right? The sales team wants to know what they can formulate. So would you have different versions of roadmaps to communicate the message to different stakeholders?
Yes. So the question is, who actually benefits from this roadmap, who uses this roadmap, and should there be different versions? Well, again, I think that's a great question that allows me to move on. and briefly at least talk about product ownership, and then I'll get back to the question where the customers and users, and what about adjusting the roadmap. So I would suggest, here's our roadmap, I would suggest that there are, in a way, three major parties that are interested in the roadmap. The product manager or product owner, the people who build the product, the team members, the development team, and the stakeholders. And the stakeholders may or may not include external stakeholders. So I think it depends a little bit really, what product you develop, and what your focus is. Sometimes it may make sense to use an internal and an external roadmap. And in a way, the roadmap that I've shown you so far is really focused more on guiding the development team and creating consensus within the organization rather than persuading customers to buy the product. So I think it's important, as you said, to be clear on what is your primary intention with the roadmap. And I've really sort of so far really, positioned it as a planning tool, an internal planning tool to plan product development essentially and manage product development. So, if those are the parties, then I would suggest that the product owner owns and manages the roadmap. For the simple reason that as a product manager or product owner, I would expect that you're responsible for the success of your product. If that's true, I should also think that you first and foremost, in a way, help determine how your product should grow, and that you have an idea where you want to take your product and how you'd like to see your product grow. And that's what the product roadmap should communicate, right? So I think you should really lead the effort of creating a product roadmap. But I would also suggest that you invite the team members to contribute to the roadmap and use the creativity and the knowledge of the development team. That has many benefits. One of them is that it helps you address and make technical risks more transparent at an early stage. So leverage the knowledge of the team members. It also means that there's something like shared ownership, that it's not only your roadmap, that you say, hey, it's great, and let's do this now, and you just have to accept it. You invite people to contribute it. That usually is a great way to build consensus. And I would suggest something similar with the stakeholders, certainly the internal stakeholders, so a management sponsor, marketing, sales, and other business groups that have to work together or contribute in order to make your product a success. Again, I would encourage you to listen to their ideas and requests in some cases. But I would also say that while I do think that it's great when a product roadmap is built on consensus, sometimes you just have to push back and say no, as hard as it may be. Otherwise, the danger is if you say yes to every request, that you end up with a feature soup and not with a great product with a great user experience, and that there is no coherent story that your roadmap communicates, but it's really just, feature lists essentially. So whenever you engage with the stakeholders and the team members, again, I would encourage you to work on and focus on establishing shared goals. And based on those goals, then have the discussion around what are the 2 to 3 high-level key features that we believe are necessary in order to meet the goals. All the other feature and requirements and stories and user interaction and visual design discussions, I suggest you have as part of your product backlog and product canvas process. Because I don't think the roadmap is really the right place to discuss detailed requirements. It's the right place to create alignment and agree on goals and maybe talk about a few high-level features. A great way to create a roadmap, certainly an agile roadmap, is to have a little workshop. 2 to 4 hours should be enough if you've got the right input, if you've done a little bit of prep work, and for instance, you know which market segments you're targeting. Yeah. So, try and build consensus, but as the product owner, product manager, take ownership of your roadmap. And so particularly for those of you who work as product owners and product managers and you haven't worked with a roadmap, then maybe you just want to go and create one and try it out and possibly show it to the team members and stakeholders and see what they think. Or you invite them and have a joint roadmapping workshop. Good. So the next slide talks about the roadmap in context, and it talks a little bit about what are my recommendations around the necessary prep work that should occur before you create the roadmap, and what could you possibly do with it. Yes. So I'd like to suggest that you do what Ash Maurya calls problem validation, so that you, before you create the roadmap, investigate the opportunity, so that you develop an understanding of the customers and the users, the market that you target, the needs and the problems that should be addressed or solved, and that you also think about the benefits that your own organization would like to achieve with the product, and some key aspects of the business model. And there are various tools you can use in order to capture your ideas and start validating them. One of them is the vision board, another little tool that I've created, but you can use Alexander Osterwalder's business model canvas or Ash Maurya's lean canvas, or another tool that works for you. But I think it's worthwhile, before you build the roadmap, that you spend a little bit of time essentially researching the market, figuring out who you want to target, why people should buy or use your product, and what's in it for your own organization, how your own organization generates value from the product. So that's in my mind the very first step, and this is where the customers and users come in. So I don't think it's possible to build a meaningful roadmap if you don't have some understanding of who the customers and users are. So we need something like a vision and high-level strategy, or certain aspects of a business model before we can build a product roadmap. That's at least what I would suggest. And once you've got that in place, you can then create your roadmap and think about how the information that you've captured so far and the ideas that you've hopefully at least partially validated at this stage, how you can detail them and how you can map them onto a timeline. So, and that's what I've tried to do with the roadmap I showed you earlier. Instead of being in a way a little bit wishy-washy and say we want to build a great game application, I've tried to make it a little bit more specific and say, well, what could be the very first release? What could be maybe something like a minimum marketable product that we can get out there and that is good enough to acquire a critical mass of users, so that we can then build on it and we can generate some revenue. So that's what the roadmap should do. It should detail your strategy, map it onto a timeline, and establish goals for the next several releases, maybe for the next 9 months, 12 months, or 18 months, depending on what works for your product. But it takes the work that was done up here. It takes the contents of a vision board, a business model canvas, and in a way refines them to a certain extent. So again, I don't think it makes any sense if you haven't done some upfront research and validation work to build a roadmap. If you don't know if you don't know who your customers and users are at all, do some upfront work and then build the roadmap. And once you've got your roadmap, you can use it then, at least that's what I like to do, in order to stock the product canvas or the product backlog. And that allows me to focus a canvas or backlog on the next major release, on the next product version. So that keeps your backlog short and sweet, it keeps it concise, and it reduces the overhead of managing the backlog, makes it easier to adjust it and update it. So if you have this roadmap, well, you have some visibility over the next 6-9 months plus, so you can usually then afford to focus your product canvas or product backlog on the upcoming release. So, the roadmap in a way acts as an umbrella for your canvas or backlog. Does that make sense? Good. So far this looks all very sequential, doesn't it? It's like, well, we do some upfront research and validation plan, then we build the roadmap, then we build the canvas or backlog. I guess now the development work occurs, and then we have this great product and we launch it, and everything's hunky-dory. But as you probably all know, the only thing that's for sure when we build a new product or build new features is that our original ideas don't quite work out. Right? Something always goes wrong. And we only find it usually out while we're building the product. So if that was everything, then you wouldn't really need a goal-oriented agile roadmap. You should be happy. You'd be able to happily work with a traditional one. So I'd like to introduce my idea of accommodating changes, and particularly in a way unplanned changes, with a goal-oriented roadmap. And I've called it pivoting with the roadmap. Pivoting is a concept that was developed by Agile Lean within Lean Startup. And the idea is that we stay true to our vision, to our overarching idea, our goal, so that we change the path towards the goal, that we change the strategy. So how can we accommodate this with the roadmap? Well, let's have a look at the process. First of all, again, we need to do a little bit of upfront validation work, think about the market and the business model. Then we build our roadmap. That's at least what we've said so far. Use it then to create something like a backlog or product canvas. And then, the team would build something tangible, a prototype, product increment, or MVP, minimum viable product. And based on that MVP, we would collect feedback, data from users and customers, and analyze it. Now, if the analysis tells us that the strategy that we've chosen so far is wrong, so I don't know, we build a first prototype of our game app and put it in front of a test group, but it turns out that the players, the kids, are quickly bored with it, and they don't really interact with it the way we thought they would. Well, either we're targeting the wrong market, or we're addressing the wrong problem, or the product is just not quite right. Yeah. So whatever it is, it means that as we've envisioned the creation of our products, as we've planned things out, as we've put down our strategy, it's wrong. So we've got to do something about it, and we've got to pivot. We've got to change the path to build, to achieve our vision, and we've got to change the way we build the product. Now, if you work, or whenever you work with a product roadmap, and you're in that position, and that's really something when you build a brand new product and you use Lean and Agile practices, that's a strong likelihood that you will have to pivot at one point or the other. So if you use a product roadmap, then that means that not only your business model or your product vision board has to change, because of that change in strategy, but also your product roadmap has to undergo some significant changes, some big changes. You may even have to throw it away and create a brand new roadmap, right? Depending on how big the change is. So an Agile product roadmap is a planning artifact, yes, but like all Agile planning artifacts, it's likely to change. It may change big way, in a bigger fashion when there's a pivot, or it may just require some incremental, smaller adjustments and changes. Particularly once you've achieved product market fit, once you're confident that the product, with its user interaction, its design, its functionality, is fit for the target group, fit for the market that you're targeting. And particularly once you've got an existing product out there and you're now more in the mode of updating your product on a regular basis without maybe bigger changes to it, and probably having bi-monthly or quarterly review meetings is sufficient. And you can do that as part of your portfolio management process, and you get together with the other product managers and product owners that work on related products within the same portfolio, and you review your roadmaps and you make the necessary adjustments. Does that sort of help to answer some of the questions? Yes, please.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about how within the vision board you would expect to model environmental factors such as legislation compliance that might seek to undermine or change or become hidden gotchas in your roadmap, in your vision, and your goals.
Yeah. So the question is, what about legislation? Yes. Well, if you know legislation is going to change, then that's probably something that, as you said, will impact your roadmap, and I would suggest you make it transparent in your roadmap. So, one goal could be to ensure compliance. That could be the goal of a specific release, and that may mean that you have little opportunity to implement new functionality. Your main focus may be on just making sure that you can still sell your product and that it complies to the new regulatory requirements. It will be a similar thing if you find that you have to carry out some major architectural refactoring for a specific release. I don't know, you've got so much spaghetti code now in your software that it's time to carry out some bigger maintenance work that may significantly impact an entire release, an entire 2 to 3 months time frame. And again, that's something I would make explicit in the roadmap. So the goal wouldn't then be to acquire new users or activate users. I mean, it's in a way a retention-related goal, I'd say, but it's really about carrying out those refactorings.
So you could make them explicit as assumptions in your vision board, for example, or in your business model canvas that underpins it.
Well, the vision board and the business model canvas are, in my mind, higher level. I mean, a business model canvas says, who are we targeting, who are the customers and users, what kind of relationship do we have to establish, what's the value proposition, how do we market and sell our services to them, what are the revenue streams, what are the cost factors, what partners do we need, key activities, key resources. I think those are the essential elements of the business model canvas. But what it doesn't tell us, how do we achieve this? And so this is where, in my mind, a roadmap can be helpful, that it in a way provides a link between something like a business model canvas and a product backlog or product canvas.
Sure.
Yeah.
I see the usefulness of that for sure. I just wonder whether there is an evolution which accounts for volatilities in certain markets, things that you need to keep an eye on outside of those factors which relate directly to customers, their propensity to buy or interact, and key features that might underpin those.
Yeah, so in terms of volatility and factors that don't relate to the segments that you're trying to address with your product, I think it's something that in a way applies to all product management activities and should be part of regular product management activities. Just looking at the market, looking at developments in the market, and also personally, I think it's beneficial to keep an eye on the competition. I know there is no competition, building block on the business model canvas. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at it. So I like to keep an eye on what competitors do. I find it helpful. Yes, please. 2 questions. I don't know who was first. Lady first.
Thanks. When you build your goal-oriented roadmap, how do you prevent that people go, so you put your goal in, then you put your functions in, you work through your product backlog, you then measure and you might not hit your measurements. So the person who's really signed up to the goal, especially from your stakeholder, might say, that goal again, the next time round, but we're just going to try different functions to achieve it, so that you're not keep swimming in your same soup because somebody's so kind of signed up to the goal. How do you prevent that from happening?
But I think you always need to look at if the release goals on your roadmap still make sense, right? And if they need adjusting and adapting. And that, in my mind, is part of a regular review process. If you haven't met the goal of, say, version 1, then you should consider, what the impact is to your roadmap, and what adjustments you have to make. You may want to adjust the subsequent goals. For me, I find it important that the goals in a roadmap, that they're just not a loose collection of different things we want to do, but that they are there's a meaningful connection, there's a relationship between the goals. All those goals are intermediate steps towards your vision and get you closer to where you want to be. And that could be, for instance, by the end of the year, have a product that turns over a certain amount of money. And that's in a way what I would work towards, and that's in a way what I would keep in mind, and then adjust the individual release goals depending on what you experience, depending on the feedback that comes back to you, the data that comes back to you, what you learn.
Yeah, probably. I imagine what you've just said is going to answer this question, but I'll say it anyway. Is how goals you've tied to major releases. So how does it work in a context of continuous delivery?
Yeah, in the context of the continuous delivery, so for me it's really a product management decision. I think it has really to do, in my mind, with how much awareness do you want to create that what you're doing is providing new functionality and new features, and you're enhancing your product and moving it forward. So I think continuous delivery and having major releases, product versions, works nicely together. Smaller updates, bug fixes, you can just release immediately. But for certain pieces of functionality or certain changes, at least, you may want to create some awareness in the marketplace, and maybe have some communication with your customers and users so they know you're doing them something good, right? I guess many of the changes that, let's say Apple could do with iOS or the desktop operating version, they could just do anyway and just release them continuously. But they still have typically an annual event where they say, oh, here's a new big shiny version. So we're all very, very thankful to them, and other companies, software companies, do the same thing. So I personally, I don't see a conflict there.
Roman, in your example of your strategy of one supporter, how often would you review your roadmap?
So when you build a brand new product, so the assumption here is building a brand new product or a major update. So we've done some upfront work, we've captured it, then we've built our roadmap, and then we're experiencing essentially some form of failure. Pivot is always based on failure, that things didn't work out as we expected, which is part of creating something new. And so that's an unexpected adjustment, and it's a major adjustment. Otherwise, what I would suggest is that generally, at the end of each, whenever you have an MVP, or something like an MVP, that you check is the strategy still valid, and that means if you work with a roadmap, is your business model, canvas or vision board, or Lean canvas, and your roadmap, are they still valid? And once your product is stabilized, and once you've achieved a more steady state, then I would suggest that every 2 to 3 months you review your roadmap. But maybe do it as part of the portfolio management process, so that you not only look at individual roadmaps, but you also look at the relationships. Because sometimes if you work, if your product is part of a portfolio, then there are likely to be changes within that portfolio over time that may impact your product, that you have to be aware of, and that may then impact and change your product roadmap.
Okay.
So goals changing on one product roadmap may actually impact then goals on another product roadmap. Yes, please.
Hiya. In your roadmap example, you'd picked quarterly releases. Was that a deliberate set cadence, or are there situations where you might have a 2-week release, an 8-week release?
Yeah, a good question. So, what about the cadence, the release cadence? I pick quarterly releases because I don't know. It's simply because it's easy in the example to explain and it's easy to show. If they're appropriate for you or not, it's really something you have to decide. I find that there's a correlation between, in a way, the life cycle of the product and the frequency of the releases. It usually takes a little bit longer to get the first release out, and as you then enhance and update your product, you can typically shorten your release cycles. On the other hand, it can be beneficial to establish something like a steady innovation cadence, like have a major release at a sort of fairly fixed rhythm every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, and so your customers and users know when to expect a bigger piece of new functionality or some bigger changes, and if necessary, they can prepare for it, so that they're not in a way surprised. But I don't think there's a specific rule around, what release cycle you should choose. I don't think there's a specific rule either how long your roadmap should be, other than working with a 3-year roadmap in an agile setting. I don't know if that makes sense. If you assume that agile is particularly appropriate where there's uncertainty and change, then it's probably difficult realistically to look out for the next three months without a lot of speculation. That's then not a plan. Yes, please.
So on that note, you mentioned that your second role is that you are effectively product owner of your website and book and so on. So what kind of planning horizon do you use there?
It depends really on the product. So with the website, it's a much shorter horizon than, for instance, with a bigger development initiative, like I'm working on a new book and a new e-learning course that has a longer planning horizon. Simply because there's more work required and I'm not able to push out the initial version and then updates as quickly as with the website, for instance. So I would really suggest that you look at your products and you look at what makes sense, and use that as a starting point. And sometimes you simply have to experiment with it. So it looks like there are no questions at the moment, which means I've either bored you to death or I've answered all the questions, or both. So this is my final slide, and it's really just a wrap up. And it really just says what we've already said. Consider using a product roadmap as a planning tool that in a way links something like a business model canvas to something like a product backlog. But be aware that in an agile context, roadmaps are likely to change, and you may have to pivot. That means you may have to radically update or replace a roadmap. Hence, keep your product roadmaps concise and focused. Focused on the goals. The more detailed that is on your roadmaps, the more you tend to be attached to them, and the harder it gets to let go and actually change them. And finally, My Go Roadmap obviously is a wonderful tool which you all should download now and try out. There's more information about the roadmap and other little tools that I've created on my website. I'd like to very much thank you for your interest, and I look forward to any more questions, either now or then at the bar. I'd like to invite you to continue the discussion afterwards as well via email and Twitter. You've got my details here, and I'm also, you can also contact me on Facebook and Google Plus and other social networks. But yeah, thank you very much for your interest. Thank you.